Hello, my name is Nick Lewis, and today I'm going to be discussing the principles of power, speed, and spin. I suppose the first question to ask is what's the difference between speed, power, and spin? I mean, isn't power a result of speed, and isn't speed a result of spin? All of these questions will be addressed in the following segment. Spin is the most important thing in order to understand the other two elements, power and speed. Speed is the result of three things. It's the result of arm speed, wrist speed, and also the spin of the card. Now this will be discussed in the next segment. Power, on the other hand, can almost be described as the angle at which the card hits the target. And this is also as a result of spin. So now we're going to be discussing speed. Now I want to mention something about the grip itself. It's important that the grip be as loose as possible, because then it's going to reduce the amount of friction that the card will have when leaving its hand. Now what you want to do is you want to coil back, kind of like hip-shoulder separation or spine-shoulder, whatever, that, you know, the baseball stuff. And we're going to be using that principle. So standing like this. And then you want to thrust with your right foot forward and put all the speed that you possibly can into your body and your arm. Just like this. And then, the last moment, you want to snap your wrist as quickly as possible, using the power from the arm to help propel the wrist, while keeping this very loose grip on the card. Now there is an element called backlash, which is going to be able to give you even more control over the spin of the card. And this will be discussed presently. Now we're going to be discussing the principles of backlash. Backlash is essentially, once you're at the end of your throw, you're actually moving your hand backwards and towards you once you're at the very pinnacle of your throw, because this will apply even more spin to the card. But there is a scientific way to do this. You can't just at any given time try to move your hand and jerk your hand backwards, because then the shot's going to become, again, inaccurate and a whole array of other things. What you want to do is make sure it's at, first of all, the end of your throw, and continue the throw downwards, while at the same time pulling very quickly. It's mostly a wrist action, just like this, and it will continue to leave the hand. Will continue to leave the hand at very quick speeds. And this is the principle of backlash. And it is very difficult to master. Now I will be demonstrating the motion in full, and then an example. Now we're going to be discussing the principles of power. And in all honesty, there's not much to be discussed here, because it's not something that exactly can be taught. It's something that must be understood through lots of self-exploration and an understanding of the nature of cards. But essentially, the power in card throwing, of course, comes from one, speed, but also from the angle at which the card hits the target. Ideally, you want the card to hit at the flat end, either this way or this way. The more surface area, the more power there's going to be on the card. Now we're going to be discussing the 4 different card throws as they relate to power, speed, and spin. The first throw is called the flick. Now this throw is used essentially for its distracting effect and is not meant to cause or inflict bodily injury. Essentially, to do this, you should hold the card in the Thurston grip and then release it very lightly, holding a very loose grip, and then snap your wrist very quickly but not have any arm motion whatsoever. If this card hits bare flesh using this throw, it will only cause minor injuries and a little bit of annoyance, and it will serve as a warning and let the enemy know that you're out there. Now we are going to be discussing the butterfly swirl, an ancient Chinese technique adapted from the shuriken several hundred years ago. The butterfly swirl has a little bit more bite to it than the preceding throw, the flick. The grip is the same, but the card should be held with a lighter and gentler touch. The index finger cocks against the northeast corner of the card and creates enough resistance to create the additional spin necessary as the card is released. The card will now travel with more revolutions per second, also known as RPS, and this produces greater impact as the surface is struck. In the pain tolerance tests conducted at Duke University, many people describe the reaction to this butterfly swirl throw with the word aculeus, which is defined as the bite of an insect. Hence the famous slogan, "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee," was born. Next, we will be discussing the famous sea urchin spin, first described by the great card thrower and magical historian, Ricky J. The conventional grip is used, that is the Thurston grip, but the card must be thrown with added force, which is provided by the arm, just by the arm. The arm should be raised to an angle of almost 45 degrees as it crosses in front of the body prior to release. When the hand releases the card, there should be a noticeable downward snap, added with a little bit of backlash, as we discussed earlier. The hand and body must move together to make this throw effective. When the technique is mastered, this throw can produce a stinging, pinching sensation, even against the levi-clad posterior of an adversary, and blood may be drawn if bare flesh is struck. If the pain inflicted by this throw is likened to the stepping on the articulated spines of the edible sea urchin, which is found on the sublittoral zones of the British Isles. This throw is very critical in the mastery of self-defense. Though not lethal, it can be very damaging around the eyes, throat, and lots of other places. Therefore, this throw should be used sparingly. Now we are going to be discussing the last and final throw, called the Dolphin Dart. The Dolphin Dart got its name from the bottlenose dolphin, who would take its head and ram itself into its opponents. This is a very, very dangerous throw and should only be used in life and death situations. It is a result of both utmost speed and power. You want the card to hit, as we discussed in the power take, flat with the most surface area possible, and it going as quickly as you can possibly have it. This will inflict the most damage onto the victim. And now we will be demonstrating the 4 basic throws as they relate to power, speed, and spin. Now I will be demonstrating the flick on an ordinary piece of paper. Now I will be demonstrating the butterfly swirl. Remember, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee! I will not be demonstrating the famous sea urchin spin. And the reason is because it's too similar to the butterfly style in terms of looks for there to be any point demonstrating it. However, I will be demonstrating the dolphin dart. And to demonstrate how hard this throw is, I will not only be throwing it through one piece of paper, but I will be throwing it through 2 pieces of paper. Join me for my next video, when I will be discussing advanced technique, such as avant-garde throws, and throwing the card up in the air and having it return to the hand, a simulacrum of the Australian boomerang.